Hello, folks. Welcome to a new episode of the Sox Machine Podcast, part of the Foul Territory Network. I'm your host, Josh Nelson. This is a special edition episode in which we're going to be joined by one of our best friends of the podcast, Jim Callis of MLB.com, to review MLB.com's most recent Top 100 update and also their top 30 prospects for the Chicago White Sox organization. With the September call-ups also rapidly approaching, that's going to be next week for all the MLB teams. Jim is going to share as far as his candidates that could be joining the White Sox roster when it expands to 28 players. But since we recorded, there's been some breaking news on the minor league front for the White Sox that we did not get a chance to touch with Jim Callis in our conversation. And that is both Roch Cholowsky and Billy Carlson missing the rest of the regular season. There's not much of a regular season left in minor league baseball, but with Roch Cholowsky's wrist soreness and the skin infection that Billy Carlson is currently dealing with, neither is going to be able to return to their respective teams before the minor league season is over. Does this mean that Roch Cholowsky will not be participating in the Arizona Fall League? Time will tell. We also just got some news from White Sox beat reporter on MLB.com, Scott Merkin, first reported that Caleb Bonemer is going to be changing positions as he is now going to be playing some outfield. He is moving out to center field. And join us on this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast, again, because we're so close to September call-ups. And it's just a nice way to also see how the White Sox prospects have fared. And just in time, because MLB Pipeline has updated their top 100 and top 30 for each organization, is one of our best friends of the show. It's Jim Callis. And Jim, good to see you again. Good to chat with you. So the updates for the top 100 now include the recent draftees, and with the top 30 shuffle, reorg after the White Sox drafted, especially with Roch Cholowsky. How are you feeling about this White Sox farm system?
I think overall it's kind of middle of the pack. We just did our farm system rankings. We updated everything finally. We had the time and the space to do it. And I think we had the White Sox at 15th, I think is where we had them, right? And again, I always tell people, when you look at the farm system, it's such a snapshot in time. If we were looking at the farm system 2 years ago, the White Sox had one of the best farm systems in baseball. And since then, and they had one of the worst, probably the worst team in Major League history at the same time too.
Yeah.
And since then, they've promoted 6 top 100 prospects to Chicago, graduated them. So they lost it. And that doesn't even count guys like Chase Meidroth, who I guess technically shouldn't count as a White Sox farm system product because he spent, 6 games in the minors or something in the White Sox system,
many.
whatever. But anyway, they promoted a bunch of guys, like the Sam Antonacci's of the world, who weren't a top 100 prospect. And so, you look at that, and obviously they've gone this summer. They're contending. I think they're going to win the AL Central, which is, who would have thought that? I thought they had a chance to be respectable this year and maybe contend next year for a wild card. But, so they weren't trading veterans for prospects to bolster the system. I thought Chris Getz did a wonderful job of, without sacrificing any major farm system pieces, getting some complementary pieces to kind of try to plug some holes on the big league team. But anyway, they're no longer in the let's just get as many prospects as we can because we're playing for the future. They're playing for now. And the farm system's done its job. It's plugged a lot of holes. They obviously had more draft money than anybody ever had and spent more in a draft than anybody ever had this year. And that kind of bolsters the system some, although you can't go crazy and just, prospects are prospects. They're not sure things. So you can't just say, hey, they spent $22 million on the draft. All these guys are going to be stars. It doesn't work that way, but they do get credit for that. But no, I think the system's I'll ask you, Josh. You're a White Sox fan, obviously. If I told you 2 years ago going into, after coming off 121 last season, okay, 18 months from now, would you be happy with like a thinned out farm system with a bunch of new draft guys, but the White Sox are contending to go to the playoffs? I think you and every White Sox fan would have said, that's great. Yes, I will take that.
Yes, especially after 121 losses, especially after 3 straight 100-loss seasons, Jim. I guess,
Yeah.
I think for a lot of baseball fans, because every baseball fan outside of the Dodgers wants their team to be like the Dodgers. They want to have this great record and also this great ranking as far as farm systems compared to other teams in Major League Baseball. But to like piggyback on your point, the White Sox are in the position that they're in because they have graduated so much of their internal talent. This isn't like an infusion of free agents and other big trades like a team like the Dodgers have made. This has been a really homegrown team that the White Sox have put together that's leading this charge and leading the AL Central.
No, it really, really has. And also, I mean, just imagine if Kyle Teal hadn't gotten hurt this year.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's obviously like the catching position is such a mess right now. You feel even better about it. But yeah, I mean, the White Sox, it's I always say it's easy. I mean, nobody wants to be in this position, but it's easier to build your farm system up when your big league club is dreadful and you're clearly playing for down the road. And then it's like, okay, well, we're going to trade Garrett Crochet. And and one of the things, and I'm not to my own horn here, but at the time, I mean, I do think that yes, if you'd split up, who was it? It was Michael Kopech, and who was the other guy they traded in the same trade when they did the three-way trade?
Oh, Eric
Fetty.
Fetty. Yeah.
And that if you split them up, maybe you would have gotten a bigger return. But I remember saying at the time that, like, I know the guy's hitting like 190 in the big leagues, but Miguel Vargas has a chance to be really good. That guy's bat. That guy was one of the top 5 or 10 hitters in the minor leagues at the time. Everybody's like, this is garbage. And then Miguel Vargas struggled, and people were like, what is Chris Getz doing? But like, and they didn't even get credit. The farm system didn't even get credit for Miguel Vargas because, again, he was a graduated big leaguer, even though he never really got regular run in LA. But it's easier to build your farm system up when it's like, okay, well, anybody who's got any kind of value, we're going to trade because we have no chance to win in the next couple of years. But like you said, everybody wants to be the Dodgers. And everybody, when you're that dreadful team, like the Rockies would kill to be the White Sox right now. Everybody, like, you're in that same mode. But again, it's not easy to do. The Garrett Crochet trade looks like it could really pay off. I mean, I think Kyle Teal will come back and be healthy. And, I said this at the time, on your podcast, Josh. Not only did they get 2 potential regulars in Kyle Teal and Braden Montgomery, those 2 guys, I don't know how much of a chance you've had to talk to them yet. Those 2 guys are great, just culture guys. And I said, those 2 guys, I think, are going to be, the basis of the culture. Once they're established in the big leagues, that they're going to help create the culture of the White Sox. So, it would be easy to be the Dodgers, and I mean, I probably shouldn't joke. I won't make any jokes about financial situations, considering my employer. That might be a bad choice. But the Dodgers also have a great, because of the Frank McCourt situation. When the McCourt sold the team, they have a great situation where they have a huge TV deal and they don't have to share a lot of that money, even though they do pay hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue sharing. So it's not like they're getting off lightly. But yeah, that's the easy way, where you basically have seemingly infinite amounts of money. And you can, to give them credit, I think what Andrew Friedman's done that is underrated is, unlike a lot of teams, say, I'm looking at you, Mets, just spending your money crazily, hey, we've got money, let's spend it. When they've gone all in on a guy or spent a ton of money on a player, they've waited for the right guy. It hasn't just been, pick on Trevor Story. Trevor Story is available, so let's give Trevor Story $180 million. They don't do that. It's like, let's get Mookie Betts. Let's get Freddie Freeman. Let's get Shohei. Let's get Yamamoto. Like, when they go in heavy on a guy, they're going in on elite players. They've shown incredible discipline to do that. So anyway, but yeah, no, I think just like the Dodgers have hit on a lot of those guys, you have to give the White Sox credit because, I mean, how long have the Angels been bad? And they keep, they haven't really committed to a full rebuild necessarily, and then they are a little bit more now. But like, it's a lot easier said than done. Prospects fail. Like, not every prospect makes it, and it's easy to be like, okay, we'll trade Garrett Crochet and we'll do this and we'll do that, and it's kind of easy. I won't call out teams by name, but there's another team in the AL Central that had some really good starting pitchers and was right on the fringes of the wild card division race. And if you looked at underhood numbers, had the best underhood numbers in AL Central. And it's just real easy to say, oh, well, we can't re-sign these guys. We're going to trade them. No, I'll give Chris Getz credit. There's a lot of guys who've been in this situation, and I'm happy for Chris because we've talked about this. I think a lot of White Sox fans were unhappy when Chris got hired.
Mm-hmm.
The infamous press conference where Jerry Reinsdorf citing Connie Mack and Branch Rickey as exemplars of what he's trying to do. And hey, we're not going to interview anybody outside the organization because Chris will be able to get this rebuild going quicker than anyone, which resulted in a 121 loss season. So, if they hired someone from the outside, it might have been 130 loss season. Who knows? and all that. And I just felt bad for Chris because I think Chris, I mean, look, the White Sox, you can look at it, you could say the White Sox have, under Reinsdorf has shown incredible loyalty to their employees. You can also say that they kind of fell behind the times in a lot of ways. And I think Chris modernized the farm system, took a farm system that was probably 30th in terms of modernization. And it wasn't number one, but, fighting the things he had to fight, he did modernize the farm system in a lot of ways. And I think since he's become GM, the one thing he's done is he's brought in a lot of people from outside the organization instead of just promoting from within, promoting from within, promoting from within. But I always kind of feared with Chris, Josh, that like he was going to kind of lay the groundwork, and he had to suffer through the 121 loss season, and he'd make trades and he'd kind of get the guys in place, and then I thought they were going to lose a lot of games for a while, and then you have 4 or 5, we have a new owner coming in at some point, and maybe Ishbia says, okay, I want my own guy in here. Chris Getz, geez, he's lost 320 games in 3 years. And I just felt like Chris was going to do all this hard work and not necessarily get to reap the benefits of it. So I'm very happy for Chris that he's done a lot of hard work, and he is going to, like, again, there's still a decent amount of time left, but like, it looks like he's going to have a playoff team. And I don't think anybody saw a playoff team coming this year. We can talk about how bad the AL Central is. It doesn't matter. They have a winning record, which in the American League is unbelievable. They might have a bye. Like right now,
Yeah,
they
number
have a
2
bye.
seed. Yeah.
I mean, and so again, you could say whatever you want about the American League or AL Central, but nobody had the White Sox doing this, and that's a credit. And I'll give credit. I mentioned the Crochet trade. I left Mydroth out, right? I was talking about Teal and Montgomery, and Chase Mydroth's been a better player than I thought he was going to be. Sam Antonacci's been a better player than I thought he was. They've done a lot of good work in a lot of areas. Again, all the fans who were killing him for Miguel Vargas should be, tipping their cap to him for Miguel Vargas. Tristan Peters, there's some luck involved there, but like Tristan Peters, good move. So anyway, I'm happy. I'm happy for Chris and the guys who are there with him that you weren't going to have to come in and do all this hard work and then get shown the door right when the team was ready to win. Kind of like, and again, I get why they did it, but like Rich Renteria with the Cubs, that was tough. Like, hey, okay, now we're good, and Joe Madden's on the market, so let's bring Joe Madden in after you like kind of shepherded the team through some tough times. So I'm happy for Chris.
Bella, where? I don't know where Bella is, but I know how to take care of my pup.
Kratz, while you find Bella, today's episode is sponsored by the ASPCA Pet Health Insurance Program. The ASPCA Pet Health Insurance Program offers customizable accident and illness plans that can fit your budget, your lifestyle, and even your pet's particular quirks. Because let's be honest, vet bills can add up fast. And when it's time to submit a claim, it's easy. Just use their app and receive reimbursement for eligible vet bills directly into your bank account so you can get back to focusing on what really matters, your pet. To explore coverage, visit aspcapetinsurance.com/FOUL. That's aspcapetinsurance.com/FOUL. This is a paid advertisement. Insurance is underwritten by either Independence American Insurance Company or United States Fire Insurance Company and produced by PTZ Insurance Agency Limited. The ASPCA is not an insurer and is not engaged in the business of insurance.
I'm with Chicago shortstop Colson Montgomery. You're known as Team First.
Yeah, I've always worked hard for the team rather than myself.
I get it. If you've been injured, my team is here to help. Call 312-6-million. Injury law made personal. That's Aiken Law.
Recently on MLB.com and podcast listeners, you can check this out. The crew, Jim Callis and Jonathan Mayo, picked one player that could be called up during September call-ups to watch. And for the White Sox, Jim, the pitching staff, I think every pitching staff in baseball right now is just exhausted. The White Sox, as we're recording this, are still in the midst of 16 games in 16 straight days. You could just see that the starters are trying to give as much as they can, and guys are being used more often than they have all season, especially Grant Taylor. You highlighted David Sandlin as that one guy for the White Sox to be called up, and he may need to make some spot starts. He was really the target when the White Sox made that trade in the offseason, Jim, with the Boston Red Sox. But Jordan Hicks has actually surprised and made some adjustments this year and has been effective for the White Sox out of the bullpen. What do you like about Sandlin's game, though? Does he have staying power as a potential starter?
maybe like it's funny because I did our Red Sox top 30. So I had him written up for the Red Sox after they got him from the Royals. I was fascinated with him. I love my JUCO prospects who were doing the draft, Josh. And he was at Eastern Oklahoma State. They had a rotation that had him and Christian McGowan and Andrew Walling, all of whom wound up being draft picks and, not first rounders, but all, being, getting like mid-round money down the road. He frustrates me a little bit as a prospect because and I do think Red Sox prospects, I try not to do this, but tend to get overhyped because they're the Red Sox and they get a lot of attention. So when the Red Sox trade John Schreiber from him, I think there are a lot of Red Sox prospects like, oh my God, what a steal. This guy's unbelievable. And he's okay. I'm not his biggest fan. I think the stuff doesn't play as well as you think it should. It's 95, 97, up to 100 on the fastball, but he has inconsistent command, inconsistent run and carry. So there's not a lot of life to it. It's more just pure velocity. So if he doesn't locate it, it gets hit. He had a sweeper that he's gone to more of a cutter that he trusts. I'm sorry. He has a sweeper and he has a cutter. He used to use a splitter as a changeup, and he barely uses as much. He just always gets hit harder than you think he should, or at least that I guess I think he should. So, I mean, I do think it's a big league arm. I don't know that I believe in the consistency enough that I think he's a starter. Now, that said, he's done this at times. I mean, you look at his numbers at Charlotte, which, as we both know, is a very tough place to pitch. It's a 2.14 ERA in Charlotte. I mean, it's 46 innings, so he's not going to win the International League ERA title. But, like, when's the last time a guy had a 2.14 ERA in 50 innings as a starter in Charlotte? I bet it hasn't happened much. But, But the funny thing is he doesn't have a strikeout per inning. He has more than a walk every 2 innings, a little bit over. So, I mean, I think he's like a lot of guys. It's a big league arm, and I think he's kind of on that bubble. Is he a number 4 or 5 starter, or can you trust him, or is he more of a middle reliever? I mean, we're kind of on a much higher level, I think, going through the same thing with Hagen Smith. Is Hagen Smith really going to be a starter, or should we just cut him loose and put him on? And, that reminds me, we talked about this on the podcast. I didn't like the move at the time. Grant Taylor, and I know like he had injury history, but Grant Taylor, it was just like they abruptly were like, you know what? We're going to make him a full-time reliever and put him in the big leagues. And we've seen this with Chris Sale and Garrett Crochet, and guys move back. And I think both of us were like, man, the White Sox aren't going anywhere in 2025. Why don't you just try to see how this works as a starter for a while? And again, I can't argue with that. Grant Taylor has been very key. So anyway, with Sandlin, maybe Tanner McDougal. It's the same thing. Is Tanner McDougal a starter? Like when he's commanding his fastball and throwing strikes, Tanner McDougal looks great. And then there's days where he doesn't do that, and you're like, I don't know. So I think he's kind of in that same boat with Hagen Smith and Tanner McDougal, where you hope he's a starter, but you don't know.
The White Sox top 5, again, you can go to MLBpipeline.com to check it out. It's the top 30 prospects, but for the White Sox top 5, it's Roch Cholowsky, Caleb Bonemer, Billy Carlson, Hagen Smith for the time being until he graduates, and also recent draftee Cole Prosek, which I raved about him as far as the draft. I thought that was a good pick by the White Sox at pick number 41. But I have to push back a little bit on the number 1 ranking for the White Sox, Jim.
Okay.
Caleb Bonemer, as we're recording this, last night hit his 32nd home run in the minor leagues, and it's a 947 OPS in Double-A. Yes, the batting average is hovering around 250, but Bonemer is almost walking 14% of the time in Double-A while demonstrating quite a bit of power, and he's younger than Roch Cholowsky. So I guess, why is Cholowsky the number 1 White Sox prospect over Caleb Bonemer?
I'd say 2 main reasons, and I think you can argue both ways. When we do our list too, we get a lot of feedback from people in the industry. We send it out to a lot of high level decision makers, pro scouting directors, that type of thing. And you would know better than me. I don't have it in front of me. So where do we have Caleb on the top 100? Like
30, number 30, yeah.
Oh yeah, so there I go. That's a good guess, 30-ish exactly. And there were people who thought we had him a bit high. I think the swing and miss and the chase worry people a little bit. Now, again, I'm not trashing him as a prospect because we ranked him 30th, but that's tempering people a little bit. is, he's got almost I think it's a 27% strikeout rate. I mean, he is walking. So people worry about that a little bit. I think when it comes down to it, and, with the draft guys, like I said, like I always believe you have to evaluate the players as talent. So I'm not from the school. I remember years ago when the Cubs drafted Mark Pryor, and he was the best pitching prospect ever to come out of the draft. I had somebody high up in the Cubs organization. They had Juan Cruz, who was also one of the best pitching prospects in minor league, say, you can't rank Mark Pryor ahead of Juan Cruz because he hasn't pitched yet. And I was like, that's ridiculous, because if I'm trading with the Cubs and you offer me Mark Pryor and Juan Cruz, I'm not going to say, well, Mark Pryor hasn't made his pro debut, so I'll take Juan Cruz. No, I'm going to take Mark Pryor. Now, you have to, on the flip side, so I think you have to evaluate the draft guys for what you think they are. But on the flip side, you have to acknowledge they have not had a chance to fail. So, sometimes in a bad farm system, it's super easy to be like, oh, this system's terrible. I'm going to put all these draft guys on the list. Well, there's no guarantee those draft guys are all going to play great. So you're just like, they aren't hitting 220 in A-ball, so I'm going to put the third-round pick at number 2 or something. So you can't do that. So I tried to temper it. And it's fun. You mentioned Cole Prosek. I think you can make a case that Cole Prosek could be number 3 on that list if you want to be aggressive. And I tried to balance being aggressive with being, hey, let's let these guys, show something too. When you're comparing Roch Cholowsky to Caleb Bonemer, there's 2 things that jump out to me. I think it's funny because Caleb's kind of flipped from hit over power last year to now power over hit. And it's, I still, and congratulations to James Fegan for, getting a beat job, which he deserved. I know he's not going to be with Sox Chicago 4, but he wrote that great story on Caleb Bonemer. I can't remember if it was last offseason, just about his swing. His swing is still not orthodox, I guess is the way to put it.
Yeah.
It's better, but it's an unusual swing and an unusual setup. And he's making it work. And look, there's sometimes guys who are just very good players and they don't do things the way everybody else does, and it works. You can't say, oh, that's going to fail. But anyway, if I'm comparing Roch Cholowsky to Caleb Bonemer, the 2 big things to me are, I think Roch Cholowsky is a better hitter in terms of pure hitting ability. Not by, I'd say, half grade. And I don't even know. I guess we have grades on these guys. I'm not even looking at my grades, what I put on them both. But I think he's a better hitter. And this is the thing where I think sometimes, and I'm not saying you, but fans are like, how can you rank one guy over another guy? You have to look at the defensive value, with those 2 guys. And I do think that, yes, Caleb Bonemer was a better shortstop than people realized. He's playing more third base. And it's interesting now because Miguel Vargas is so good. How are you going to make room for all these guys? But Caleb Bonemer, I think, if you're projecting him out, is probably an above-average third baseman. Or I think if a majority of their infielders, and they still have a lot of infield prospects, are as good as they hope, Caleb Bonemer is going to wind up on the outfield corner when all is said and done.
Yeah.
He's probably going to be a left fielder, right fielder. Roch, it's interesting because Billy Carlson, we and I've said this a million times. A lot of guys told us best high school defensive shortstop they've ever seen. He's going to have to hit though too. Roch Cholowsky was the best defensive player in this year's draft. I don't think there's any question that he could play big league defense right now. That he'd be a better shortstop. I'm not saying better player, but ready to hit. Better shortstop than Colson Montgomery right now. He's that good. His defensive floor and ceiling are huge. And I talked. We're talking about Bonemer hitting 32 home runs. And I'm not saying that if Roch Cholowsky's in the minor leagues next year, he's getting 32 home runs. But Roch Cholowsky's got 25 to 30 homer power. So for me, I have a guy who I think is a slightly better hitter, who's got comparable power, and he's got Gold Glove shortstop ability, versus a guy who is probably going to be a good third baseman or, an average and maybe a little bit better than that corner outfielder. He won't be Andrew Vaughn running around right field or anything like that. So that would be why. If you're projecting him out. Now, I fully understand if you're going, okay, what have you done in pro ball? Caleb Bonemer was, Carolina League MVP, and now he's got 31 homers this year. I hope we get to see him in the fall league, although I don't know that there's really a need for that. And Roch's off to a 6 for 36 start. So I get it, but I think if you're projecting him out, and I honestly think if you got White Sox officials and they were forced to tell you the truth, because publicly they're not going to say, hey, this guy's better than that guy. But I think if you talk to White Sox officials and they answered honestly, they would tell you that Roch Cholowsky is a better prospect than Caleb Bonemer.
I've just been really impressed with Bonemer. Like, this has been
Me
also
too.
another one of the big surprises to go from 12 home runs last year to 32. And it's like, are the White Sox are in need of a right-handed power bat in the next couple of years, Jim, to pair up with Miguel Vargas. Is that Caleb Bonemer? I know we talk
Yeah,
about like
and
Roch Cholowsky, but is it Bonemer?
It might be next year. It might be next year on both those guys.
It's so
Oh,
fun.
the funny
now.
thing is, it's like, I do think, I don't know where you play all these guys. Like, it's tough. Like,
Yeah,
I think you
because
got to start
Antonacci's
like,
not bad in left field.
yeah. Now that one's. I mean, he really like. Ideally, he'd be your glue guy, filling in a bunch of different positions. But yeah, I mean, I feel like you probably have to start exposing Caleb Bonemer to the outfield soon, because unless you're going to chain reaction, put Bonemer at third, Vargas at first, Murakami at DH, and Benintendi, back in the outfield somewhere. Yeah, I don't know how they're going to do that. And like, yeah, it's funny because the guy who I always thought was kind of interesting, but was more like the guy who's played way over expectations this year is Tristan Peters. And you can't go into next year saying, well, Tristan Peters might turn back into a pumpkin. But ultimately, he might be the guy who loses his job, but then he's also your center fielder. So I like who plays center field if Tristan Peters stops hitting, like, and you're trying to jam Bonemer into the lineup. I don't know, but like I do think. Well, I mean, I'm sure they've obviously thought about this. They have to figure out, okay, when Bonemer comes, if Bonemer's ready midseason next year, if he's our third baseman, what's the chain reaction? And if he's going to be an outfielder, we need to start playing the outfield.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like you got Bray Montgomery and Sam Antonacci on the corners. So like what are you doing? Like, maybe it buys you a little time, but we both know how Charlotte plays. I mean, that's the most impressive thing to me is with Bonemer is the power. Birmingham is where bats go to die.
Yeah.
And he's got 14 homers there. And I think he's actually making more contact in Double-A than he was in High-A. I mean, so if he goes to Charlotte next year, what are we going to pencil him in for 40 home runs if he plays full season in Charlotte? So he's going to have to be up. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm saying this as a joke, but like Sam Antonacci will just become a center fielder now, and like because he just overachieves. Like Sam Antonacci will become a plus defender in center or something. I don't know, but like it's interesting that and like again, they could probably you could probably slow play Roch, but if Roch does what I expect him to do, I think Roch's gonna be pushing for big league promotion toward the end of next year.
Yeah.
And so like right now, when everything's going good with the lineup, like where do you put those guys on the lineup? Like who are you put on?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a fun conversation to have more bats than spots. The White Sox have not had this stuff on the hitting side for a while, Jim.
No, and like we've talked about it. Like I feel like Antonacci probably is more your long-term second baseman, and he hits lefty, and Maedroth hits righty. But Maedroth is having a really good year, so it's I mean, right now, looking at their lineup, the guy who's probably been outside of catcher, which has been a mess with all the injuries, the weakest spot in the lineup has probably been what? DH. But Benintendi's got 2 more years on his contract.
He next year would be his last year. But catcher, the White Sox have been really struggling hitting from the catcher spot this year because Caro.
Well, I think if you get Kyle Teal healthy, maybe that's and you could go with like an offense defense platoon. So like I feel like even though they don't have the catcher right now, they feel like they have the catcher. They just need to get Kyle Teal healthy, and I would think that's probably one of their biggest things on their shopping list is to get a strong number 2. But I was just going to say, like, maybe because it's last year. I thought Benintendi had a 5-year contract.
He did. Yes, he does.
Well, wasn't it 24, 25, 26, 27, 28?
Oh, you might be right.
Yeah,
I might be counting wrong here. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to look here real quick. But anyway, like I say, that's the tricky part because he's been kind of a wash. Like, he's had some moments, but he's kind of a wash as your DH. Yeah, it's starting 23. You're right. So through 27. So maybe that makes it a little bit more palatable since it's the final year of his contract. If you need to put Murakami at DH and Vargas at first and Bonemer at third, that's just what happens.
It's time to remind everyone why baseball is glorious, especially nowadays where you could think your team is out of it, but they might be back in it again. Let me introduce you to the American League Wild Card, KP, and let's tell everyone why they might need to head back to SeatGeek, grab some more tickets for what is a playoff race before the playoffs actually begin.
Well, speaking about being out of it, I'm an American League East guy, and I'm talking to you, Toronto fans. I'm talking to you, Baltimore fans. A couple weeks ago, probably not a reason to come out to the games. Look at the standings right now. Both of you teams are right back in this wild card race.
Rangers fans. We can go on and on. Mariners fans, you might be feeling a little queasy, but you're still in this thing too. So, all of you should head to SeatGeek and get yourself 10% off your next set of MLB tickets. 10% off MLB tickets with the promo code Territory10. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so that you can use it later.
We did get some fan questions, and the fan question that I like to start off with, Jim, is about on the pitching side, because for all the development and excitement and the positivity that the position players have provided this year, there's been some concern on the pitching side for the White Sox because Hagen Smith and Noah Schultz haven't developed in the way that I think a lot of White Sox fans were hoping for this season, Jim. So that was our first fan question, is from your perspective, how has White Sox pitching develop progressed this season? Are you noticing any other future MLB pitchers?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough because the the expectations for the team changed so much this year. Like if the team was what we thought it was going to be this year, then Noah Schultz would have gotten more time to kind of figure things out at Charlotte. I still think Noah Schultz has a chance to be pretty good if he's healthy. Like I said, with Hagen Smith, that one's a little tough because I do think Hagen Smith and Tanner McDougal and David Sandlin are all like, and this is going to be the biggest question for the White Sox going forward: is where do the pitchers come from? Can you is Davis Martin going to be this good every year? Is Sean Burke going to be this good every year, or are they having a career year? At a time where it was perfect because the serendipity of the AL Central being there for the taking. So I don't know that it's so much like when they took Hagen Smith, even though he was the number 5 pick in the draft, there was still that question. It wasn't the smoothest delivery. It wasn't the best strike throw. I mean, it was great stuff. And even his first year, they kind of had to rebuild him or remake him a little bit during the season. And then he looked great in the fall league. So, I think with their pitching development, I think Brian Bannister is a very smart guy who gets a lot of plaudits. I think their pitching development's fine. It's just they haven't invested as much in pitching prospects, and that's probably something they have to do going forward. You don't draft for need. And I agree. And even this year, I mean, they took some pitchers this year. They took Volchko, and they took Segura, and they took Scolari, and they took Kyle Castile. And spent money on all those guys. But I think they've done it for a while. Hey, we're going to take whoever we think is the best guy available, which is the way to do it. And it's ironic because the one year they spent the first round pick on a pitcher in the last couple, you could argue maybe they should have taken a hitter, although they wound up with Bray Montgomery. So, whatever. It'd be fun. Like, what if they taken Jack Caglione? Then they're like, then what would the lineup look like right now? Maybe they don't go sign Murakami. No, that's honestly probably what happens. So it's always interesting how these sliding doors moments. But I do think that's going to be the big challenge, and that's probably going to be their like a lot of times when you have teams that have a lot of young talent. I say this all the time. They're better. They get better quicker than you think, and I think the White Sox have done that this year. And then the corollary of that is, and then there's usually they regress the next year, and then going forward they're good. So I bet I would take although I'm not allowed to gamble on baseball, I would take the under on whatever your White Sox over under is for wins next year, just because that's the way things work. And I do think the pitching, they're going to have to figure that out. And my guess is I don't think they're going to be like the Angels. Hey, let's draft all pitchers in 2027. Like the Angels did a couple years ago. But I think they are going to have to start being more aggressive. Like now it's different. It's not just, hey, we got to get the big league team put back together again. Now it's like we have a contender. They're going to need pitching. And it'd be interesting. I mean, you don't often see prospect for prospect trades, and pitching's hard to acquire. But I almost wonder with the White Sox, or we talk about, they have more spots, more hitters than spots at the big leagues, certainly by the end of next year. Chris Getz, going out and trying to acquire some kind of young pitching next year. Maybe Ishbia will say, go get Scooble. Let's get Scooble and add him to the rotation. I don't know. But, like, that's going to be the big question going forward is what they do with the pitching. Because even their best pitchers this year, as much as I like, Sean Burke and Davis Martin, I mean, that was a great find for them. Are they really going to be this good year after year after year? I don't know. And if they're not, then the rotation's really a question mark.
Yeah, they could use an ace. They could use somebody to really lead that starting rotation going to next season and beyond. That seems to be the one thing that they're missing for their surprising run this season. The next question that we got was about Billy Carlson's defense. Just how legit is his defense? Is it enough to make him a future major league shortstop if the bat continues to be behind? And maybe if Billy Carlson's more of a 40 grade hitter, but if the defense is 70 grade, is he still a major league hitter? Is he still a major league shortstop?
I'd say yes, because I do think the defense is that good. And it's funny because he's actually, the questions on him coming into the year with the bat were that he was more of a power over hit guy. And he's hit 252 with a 380 on base, but no home runs. And he has had the hand injury, which I think does mute the power. I mean, I think if you go kind of, let's go median projection on him. Let's say he's a 230, 15 to 20 homer, Gold Glove shortstop. I do think there's value in that. I mean, that's not the guy you want on your fantasy baseball team necessarily, but you want him on your big league team. And I do think teams are more I still don't fully trust defensive metrics because you get defensive metrics contradict each other, and you'll still see guys have these crazy outlier seasons where the guy's below average. All of a sudden he's a plus defender, and then he's below average the next year, and you're like, well, was he really a plus defender that one year or what? But even that aside, I do think the defensive metrics the teams have are better than the public ones, for one. And two, I think they have enough history with them now that I think they feel pretty confident that they can assign value, like very specific value to how good a player's defense is. And so if Billy Carlson is that 70 defender, but he's hitting 230, which faces is I mean, that's probably more like league average. So let's see, it's 220 with it just depends. Like the problem for Billy Carlson is who else is in the system, and I do think the biggest problem for Billy Carlson now is Roch Cholowsky, because Roch Cholowsky wasn't the best high school shortstop anybody ever saw, but Roch Cholowsky, like I said, was the best defensive player in this year's draft. And Roch Cholowsky is going to get to big leagues. He's going to be ready probably a year and a half, 2 years ahead of Billy Carlson. So if Roch Cholowsky comes to Chicago, and let's be conservative with Roch. Let's say Roch hits 250 with 20 homers and he's a plus defender at shortstop, then Billy Carlson's going to have a hard time displacing that unless he's hitting 250 with 20. You're not going to take 220 with 15 home runs and really, a half-notch better shortstop. So I think that's the question on Billy Carlson is drafting Roch Cholowsky was probably not good for Billy Carlson's future in Chicago. But if he hits, then you'll find if Billy Carlson is on the let's say Billy Carlson's 240 with 20 homers, then that's a different conversation.
And this topic of Billy Carlson and as far as his future, because I thought, Jim, that if the White Sox wanted to get somebody like Reed Detmers, I would have been okay using Billy Carlson to try to acquire someone like Reed Detmers. But we did get this question: why didn't the White Sox make a bigger swing at the trade deadline for this season? Are there other MLB teams that are skeptical of White Sox prospects? So I guess in that second part first, when you do speak to other teams, do you ask them about other teams' farm systems? Like, has any other scouting directors given you feedback on what they think about the White Sox prospects?
Yeah, it's more like when we're talking, because when we do our list, I'll try to talk to other teams about lists, like pro scouting directors and that type of thing. I don't think there's a skepticism. I just think, we talked about the White Sox. White Sox farm system's ranked 15th right now. And, before the trade deadline, if we'd done pre-trade deadline rankings, they would have ranked lower because we weren't counting the draft guys. But, you look at the system, you're not trading Caleb Bonemer. They weren't going to trade Caleb. I also think I like their measured approach. It wasn't just we're just going to trade everybody, do what we can. But, if you look at their top five based on what it was before we added the draft guys, Caleb Bonemer, Billy Carlson, Hagen Smith, Tanner McNougal, Jaden Fauske, and William Burgoyne would be 6. You're not getting a lot for a lot of it. I'm sure. if you want to trade Caleb Bonemer, you could have gotten a really good piece. And my guess is that was the one guy they didn't want to trade. I don't know this, and we don't know this. Maybe they did offer Billy Carlson for Reed Detmers or somebody like that, and the Angels said no. You just don't know. I mean, I always tell people when they're frustrated with what their team didn't do at the trade deadline. Or I have this Yankees fan who writes me all the time, and he always claims everybody asks the Yankees for more prospects than they ask other teams for. And I'm like, that's garbage. Like, no, like there is no, hey, let's screw the Yankees by like, we won't make the same trade with you. You have to give us more. It's like everybody always says like, why didn't this GM do this or that? You don't know what was offered.
Yeah.
Just like I say, like everybody was all angry about the Skubal trade. It's like, show me a team that could have offered more than that. Like, because they wanted pitching. Like we heard the Brewers offered 3 top 100 guys, but no pitchers, and didn't want to give up Logan Henderson. Well, Brewers, you just took yourself out of the running. Like, you knew what they wanted. And so like everybody was whining about what the Dodgers gave up. So I don't think there's a skepticism about the prospects. I just think, if we're being honest, okay, Caleb Bonemer, yes, we'll take him. There's some swing and miss, but like that guy looks great. Top 30 prospect, sure, we'll take him. If we want to play, devil's advocate, Billy Carlson, there's questions about the bat. Hagen Smith, there's questions. Is he a starter? Tanner McGougal, is he a starter? Jaden Falsky, interesting, but not a top 100 guy. No, I'm not going to give you Reed Detmers for Jaden Falsky. Like he might be the second player in a deal type of thing. So we just don't know. We don't know what was offered. But yes, I'm with you. Like if the Angels, like you could have gotten Reed Detmers, if you could have gotten a starter you could control for some term going forward, yes, I would give up Billy Carlson. And I do think, wouldn't shock me at all if the White Sox engaged the Angels in those discussions during the offseason. I was actually surprised, to flip that around, the Angels didn't trade. I'm not saying you had to trade Neto, but I don't understand why they didn't trade more of those. Like I think Reed Detmers might have had a lot of value. And they had some guys in that boat, and there was some thought, oh, they might trade a lot of these guys, and they didn't. So I don't know if I lay that blame at the White Sox as maybe it was the Angels. But yes, to get back to the question, I would, because especially now Roch Cholowsky, if you can acquire pitching, using Billy Carlson to acquire some pitching in the offseason, I would do that.
And then the last question that we have, are teams doing anything different to evaluate durability, whether it comes to position players and pitchers, when they're giving you feedback on how they're ranking as far as their like top 30? Like they may like a guy, but that guy can't stay healthy. So I wouldn't rank him that high because we're not too high on them because, again, the durability question.
I don't think a team would tell me that about their player. They might say that we get that feedback on other players, and it's not like when we do these lists, I always say it's not like I'm talking to White Sox people and they're dictating the list to me. Hey, here's the list. Here's how it should go. Hey, we need you to rank this guy higher, this guy lower. They don't do that. And I do think they're fairly honest, but except for like maybe a guy who's been hurt repeatedly, if there's some underlying like biomechanical thing, or they know, I don't know, like guy's got something with his knee that's worrisome that hasn't surfaced yet, they are never going to tell us unknown health. Like some teams won't talk about health at all. Other teams will answer questions if I ask, about like, hey, like this guy was hurt. But I mean, I have teams that won't tell me what guy, like, hey, this guy missed, 6 weeks in May and June. And I have teams will not tell me, it's not even like hockey, like upper body, lower body. It's just, we're not going to comment on that. So no, teams would never. Were you wondering about some White Sox guy in particular, or?
No, I think it's just like philosophical. Like, when we talk about like starting pitchers, like Grant Taylor, for example, why did Grant Taylor get rushed? Because the White Sox are concerned that Taylor's shoulder would not hold up every 5 days throwing 100 pitches. Instead, they think it's probably better suited that he throws 30 pitch outings 3 or 4 times a week. Like that was their concern that we heard at Sox Machine, and why Taylor is now in the bullpen. That can change.
Which is fair. And he also didn't show much feel for throwing anything that wasn't a power pitch. Like it was, I mean, I think teams, it's fine. I mean, that would be, if a team could ever figure out like predictive injury information, and teams are spending a lot of time trying to do that.
Yes.
But I mean, like the only thing that's predictive about pitching injuries is that like they're going to happen. Like, we harder, they're spin the ball harder. They're trying to make the ball move more than ever, and they do that, and it just puts more strain on the arm. And then like there was a while, like, and I don't even think this works right. It's like I was almost like, okay, well, give me the high school. Like if you're looking at amateur pitchers, don't give me the guys throwing 97, 98. Give me the guys that are throwing 91, 94 and do it easy. Those guys just get hurt too. Like I just think, I think we're at the point where even the guys who don't throw super hard, relatively speaking, are still throwing, like the average fastball in the big leagues is 94, 95 right now. And you could see a lot of that in the minors. Maybe it's not 94, 95, even college baseball. When you're talking about the higher levels of college baseball, like
especially SEC, yeah.
You see a lot of guys throwing hard. And I just think it may be, I'm oversimplifying this, that like if you regularly throw over 92 miles an hour when you're young, your arm can't handle that. Like, and it's, it's you were talking about the White Sox pitching being devastated. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy to me. You just look at all these guys who like pitch and then they get DFA'd. Or I was just reading today, Javier Assad, who, kind of does it with mirrors, but he's pitched like 400 plus innings in the big leagues and has an ERA of about 3.36. And he just got sent, came up there today and did it again, pitched well for the Cubs. Now they have guys coming off IL, and it's like, Javier Assad, you have options remaining. You're going back to the minors. It's like the way these guys get used is crazy too. And we'll see it. We're going to see it throughout the rest of the regular season for all these contending teams. Hey, we need a pitcher. Well, okay, we'll pick this guy. We'll bring this guy up to the big leagues because we used our bullpen's taxed, and a guy will pitch twice, and then they'll DFA the guy, and just the merry-go-round continues and continues.
Yeah, Assad pitched really well against the White Sox in that Crosstown Classic at Wrigley Field. Well, that's all the questions I have for you, Jim. I did get one from our Veterans Committee about George Wilcow. White Sox fans are always curious about George Wilcow. Is there still a path for him to becoming a major leaguer?
There is. It's funny because I think I have a soft spot for him. And every time we do our lists and I get internal feedback, Sam Dykstra and Jonathan Mayer are always like, you're a little high on George Wilcow. And it's like, okay, but like, here's the thing about George Wilcow. He's 20. So if he didn't reclassify and he'd just gone to college, he'd be a college sophomore right now. And again, I mean, the problems with George are still the problems with George, where there is swing and miss. Doing the math here, swing and miss is, the strikeout rate's over 30%. The guy's hit 21 home runs in high A ball at age 20, like at basically college sophomore age. So yeah, I think there's a path. I mean, look, I mean, he is what he is. He's got huge raw power and there's swing and miss. And I think he's reasonably athletic for a guy who's 6'7", 239 pounds. And it just comes down to, like, next year he'll go to, like, Birmingham is going to be the test because Birmingham's a tough place to hit. He'll go to Birmingham next year. Like, I keep thinking maybe we'll get George in the AFL this year. I could see that.
That'd be kind of fun.
A little exposure, to like what AA pitching might be like. We might get Roch Cholowsky in the fall league, which would be very exciting. That's fingers across for that one. But anyway, with George, he's like a lot of these guys. I mean, his raw power is huge. It's at least 70 raw power on the 28 scout scale. And just because does he make enough consistent contact to tap into it? I mean, there's just such a variety of outcomes. But yeah, I do think there's a path to big leagues. I mean, he might be one of these guys who's like a 220 hitter with 25 homers in the big leagues. I can see that. And he's not a zero in the outfield. He moves well enough for a big guy, and he's got a good arm. So yeah, I think there's a path. And it's funny because internally I had some Sam and Jonathan were like, Alex Weingartner should go ahead of Wilcow. And I'm like, scouts have questions about Alex Weingartner's bat too. Like, and George is hitting, he's got 20 homers in high A at age 20. So like, no, I'm not putting him behind Alex. Like, I have him back to back on the list, but I was like, I can't put him behind Alex Weingartner when scouts are wondering, like, it's the same thing. Alex Weingartner is fascinating because like his tools are, I'm trying to think. He probably has the best all-around physical tools in the system, right? He has to. Like it's well above that. It's probably at least plus raw power with at least double plus speed and double plus arm strength. But there's questions about his bat, so we'll see. Yeah, still have the soft spot for George Wilcow. And like, again, yeah, he is striking out, but he's got 21 homers. So he'll have to keep proving it. But like literally next year, he'll be in Double-A in what should have been his junior season in college. So like that, I feel like he gets a little bit of a hard time more than he should. I mean, he is what he is, but it's not like he's going out there hitting 180 with 12 homers and we're like, it's not going to work. I mean, he's putting up numbers.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lottery ticket. It was a risk by the White Sox, and so far, it's still been worth the risk for the White Sox to take George Wilcow and give him $1 million and see if they can develop him. So there's still some potential with George Wilcow. Be very exciting if he does play in the Arizona Fall League. Speaking of the AFL, that'll probably be the next time that we speak with you, Jim, recapping all the action that happens in the Arizona Fall League. So for now, podcast listeners, make sure you are visiting MLBpipeline.com so you can check out the top 100 update and also the top 30 White Sox prospects. And of course, listen to one of my favorite baseball podcasts out there, the MLB Pipeline podcast with Jim Callis and Jonathan Mayo, especially with September call-ups coming up. And if you are still in the midst of fantasy baseball and you're in the postseason, these guys can help out as far as in the margins, especially in the Sox Machine Fantasy Baseball League. That's 32 teams deep. So again, go read Jim's work, follow him on social media. And Jim, as always, thank you so much for joining the Sox Machine podcast.
Anytime, Josh. It's always fun. Thank you.